Fox News Alert, Governor DeSantis announcing who will replace Marco Rubio. Let's listen in.
We can't choose the easy path here. We must be able to do what it takes, make the hard decisions necessary to usher in a revival of the American experiment. Now, President Trump's election was remarkable, and he earned a mandate for change. And yes, the results themselves, winning the popular vote, winning the swing states, was certainly something that's noteworthy. But what was more noteworthy is no candidate has ever had to endure a flurry of bogus prosecutions and 2 assassination attempts and having the entire legacy media apparatus doing everything they can to prevent his return to office. So we as Republicans cannot squander this opportunity. And that means we need a Congress, both the House and the Senate, that will rise to the occasion and make history. No more business as usual in Washington, D.C. Now, of all the issues that the American people rendered a verdict on, there's perhaps no issue that's been more significant over these past 4 years than immigration and the open southern border. The American people do not want to have our borders opened. We are a sovereign nation, and we must control who comes into our country on the terms that we as Americans set. That means we not only need to support President Trump's agenda to secure and shut the border, but we also need to make sure that we're enforcing the laws inside the United States. We've called a special session of the Florida legislature because Florida is going to be working with the Trump administration to make sure our immigration laws are enforced. I don't want to see some illegal alien gang just be able to operate and then you only do anything once they've already committed serious crimes. Identify them and get them out of the country. We must make illegal immigration illegal once again. The other issue that clearly animated voters' momentous decision in November is the economic crunch facing people all across the United States of America. This economic crunch is government-induced. We are currently now, thanks to federal policies, locked in a vicious cycle of deficits, debt, money printing, and crushing inflation. We need Republicans in the Congress to stop this spending spree once and for all. Downsize the federal government, eliminate wasteful programs, abolish certain agencies, and empower the states to take over the functions that our founding fathers originally intended. Florida has shown that this can be done. We have cut taxes every year since I've been governor. I have had the opportunity to veto billions and billions of dollars in wasteful spending, and we have paid down 36% of the state's historical debt. From the 1840s to the present, we've paid down 36% just since 2019, and it's not an accident that because of those policies, since I took office in 2019, Florida leads the nation in economic growth amongst all 50 states. We've shown it can be done. They need to get it done. We also have a mandate as Republicans to restore our constitutional order. Our founding fathers never intended there to be a fourth branch of government, this sprawling administrative permanent bureaucracy. We cannot tolerate a massive concentration of power that is unaccountable to the American people. We must reconstitutionalize this federal government. We also understand the role that the courts, particularly Supreme Court justices, play in enforcing the Constitution, and particularly the constitutional limits on federal power. We need a senator that understands the important role that Senate plays in confirming Supreme Court appointments as well as lower courts, and the model for justices need to be justices like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. Finally, Republicans must fight the woke agenda and they must defeat the radical left. Florida has fought and won against the woke agenda. We have won time and time again against the political left, And right now, the Democratic Party in this state lies in ruins, and we are a solid Republican state, which people didn't think was possible even 5 years ago. At the national level, we need to rid our institutions, federal agencies, universities, corporations of the pernicious woke ideology and woke agenda. We need to restore common sense, and we need to restore basic American principles throughout our society once again. Now, in appointing a U.S. Senator, I initially put out several different criteria. One, I want somebody that's going to work with President Trump to deliver on the mandate he earned from the American people. I want a senator that's going to be willing to lean in against the excessive spending and cut spending and stop the inflation. I want somebody that understands that the federal bureaucracy is run amok and it must be held to account, and we need 3 branches of government, not 4 branches of government. And we need somebody that understands the fight against illegal immigration, is willing to shut the border, and importantly, make sure any legal immigration to this country is putting Americans first. Can't be bringing foreigners in to displace our own people in key positions. So this is something that I thought about long and hard. We did a lot of research. We got a number of great candidates throughout the state of Florida, and many of them, I think, could have done a good job. But the final criteria I used was, because you can say all those things and say you stand for it, I wanted somebody with a demonstrated record of delivering results on those important issues. Talk is cheap. We need people that have demonstrated fidelity to these principles with their actions. So that is why today I'm proud to announce that I am selecting our Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to serve as our next U.S. Senator. So, you want to sit down while I talk about you? So, many of you know her. She's obviously been on the ballot twice statewide and won big victories. She's honorably served our people as her time as Attorney General over these last 6 years. She's a 5th-generation native of Plant City, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area, and even was named queen of the famous Strawberry Festival back in her youth. She's a triple Gator graduate of the University of Florida. And she's built an impressive resume as a commercial litigator and as a federal prosecutor. When she was an assistant U.S. attorney here in the Middle District of Florida, she handled gun and fraud cases. Later, when she was in the Tampa Narcotics Division, she was recognized for her prosecutorial excellence by federal agencies. In 2007, she became Florida's youngest circuit court judge at the tender age of 31, where she championed initiatives for at-risk children and expanded access to legal representation for vulnerable Floridians. And that's all great, but really where the rubber hits the road is once you get an opportunity to serve statewide in the state of Florida and be the Attorney General, are you just biding your time, or are you making the most of it to deliver big things for the people that sent you there? And I'm happy to say we've had an Attorney General who has been somebody that has acted time and time again to support the values that we all share, whether that's illegal immigration, opioid and fentanyl crisis, human trafficking. She has stood strong time and time again. Most recently, in this past year, filing lawsuits and joining lawsuits to take on the weaponization of law enforcement that targeted then candidate Donald Trump. She took on Jack Smith for his politically motivated persecution of the former president, fought back against the rogue Attorney General of New York for her politicizing justice, led the Florida investigation into the second Trump assassination attempt in Palm Beach, even as the federal government continues to try to block her efforts. She's been a national leader in fighting the Biden administration on many different fronts, including on immigration. She's not only filed more than a dozen separate lawsuits, but she's actually won against Biden with his reckless border policies. She's demanded appropriately the impeachment of Alexander Mayorkas and the designation of Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. In her role as AG, she has stood strong for law and order. She believes in putting criminals in jail, not releasing them back onto the street where they will offend again. She does not support soft on crime leftist prosecutors. In fact, we have removed prosecutors here in the state of Florida, and she has stood with us every step of the way, and we have won those lawsuits as a result of her efforts. She's also rejected DEI, ESG, gender ideology, and supported our efforts to ensure Florida's education is free from impositions of the radical left. When COVID was raging, few were willing to stand up across this country. We in Florida established our state as a beachhead of liberty, as the free state of Florida, and she was with us every step of the way. We beat the Biden administration that had continued to keep our cruise lines closed, and we liberated the cruise industry because of her lawsuit. We also beat Biden on the employer vaccine mRNA mandate, which was going to have people lose their jobs if they didn't take this shot that many people didn't want. So her efforts were really critical in achieving those success for medical freedom. She was also a staunch opponent and helped us defeat Amendments 3 and 4 in the most recent November election. She sued in the Supreme Court against Harvard's race-based affirmative action discrimination admission process. She sued Biden administration to prevent brutal transgender surgeries on these minor kids. And she challenged the federal accreditor system to free university from politicized leftist accreditors. She's also fought to strengthen the security integrity of our elections here in the state of Florida, which we treat very significant. She has led prosecutions of voter fraud cases against illegal aliens who voted here in the state of Florida. She's also supported other states as they attempt to secure their election systems, including in Virginia, where she urged the Supreme Court to uphold their removal of illegal aliens from the voter rolls. When it was revealed that FEMA aid workers under President Biden discriminated against Trump supporters who were impacted by last year's hurricanes here in Florida, she filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against those who were responsible, and Florida still remains the first and only state to hold these people accountable for their political discrimination. She's an outspoken proponent of the State of Israel and has battled against anti-Semitism in the business world, academia, and even taken on the United Nations, which she has pledged as a senator to defund once and for all. She has fought against overreaching federal agencies like the ATF, the EPA, and the FDA to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans and to prevent bureaucratic entities from encroaching on our God-given freedoms. And then when it comes to our nation's foremost adversary, China, Ashley has been integral in our state's effort to defend Florida against Chinese influence. She defended our laws preventing China from purchasing land in the state of Florida. She worked with the Florida Pension Fund to divest state holdings from China and Chinese companies, and she opposed China's ability to spy on Americans through the use of social media apps. So in every major battle we have had since I have been governor, she has been with us every step of the way. It's not just talk, it's results. And these results are very, very important. And she understands the gravity of the moment. We may not have an opportunity like this in the near future. This is a once in a decade, maybe even once in a generation opportunity in this current Congress is ultimately going to determine whether we do usher in that revival of the American experiment, or is it just going to be status quo, passing the buck, and nothing ever changes. So I'm pleased to be able to introduce to you for her first words as the senator appointee from the state of Florida, our Attorney General and your next United States Senator, Ashley Moody.
Well, governorship fashion, he gave me a mere couple of hours to figure out what I was going to say to you. But that is because he is deliberate and takes nothing lightly and understands the importance of this role. Governor, I want you to know I will not let you down. I will not let the citizens of Florida down, and I will not let my country down. It was just 6 years ago that I met this very eager, passionate guy who wanted to be the governor of Florida and said, if we go in there and we implement conservative policy, if we scale back, make sure we return this to a limited government, we will prosper. And look at what Florida has done since. We lead the nation in net in migration, new business formation, and law and order. I can go on, and it has been at the leadership and direction with this guy right here. And I am proud not to just say I have fought alongside you for 6 years, but I'm proud to call you a friend, and I am very honored with this nomination. Thank you so much. I will bring the same persistence and passion and tenacity as a United States Senator that I have brought as Florida's Attorney General. If you have worked with me and fought with me over the last 6 years, you know I don't think of this as a job. I think of it as a calling. Every day I go to work, every decision that I make, every person I hire, I do so with the understanding that the people of Florida gave me this opportunity, and I want to deliver on what I assured them, and that was we were going to protect their rights, we were going to protect the autonomy of this state, we were going to protect our communities. And I believe that we have done that, and I think we have to take that same direction to the United States Senate. This guy used to be in Congress, and he says to me and has said to me, I don't know why anybody would want that job. I said to him, I kind of agree with you, Governor. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty energetic. I like to get things done, focus on problems, solve the problems, deliver those to the people that hired you, your bosses, the citizens. And there's a lot of deadlock in Washington. And then I thought more about that. And I thought, if every person with the same energy, the same love, the respect for our founding principles, the ideals on which this country was built on, if every person like that with that personality said, I don't think I'd like serving in Congress, then we'd never change that culture. And so you're probably right. I probably won't like it. But I'm ready to show up and fight for this nation and fight for President Trump to deliver the American First agenda on day one. What has angered me the most as Attorney General, as I've had to fight the Biden administration over the last 4 years, when we have seen policy after rule, after financial decisions, spending out of these agencies, as the agencies have gotten bigger, as they have taken more power, as they have tried to tell the states what to do more and more and more, all that does is take the will of the people, the want of the people through their elected representatives in Congress, and turns this into a country we don't even recognize anymore. And whether it's agencies making these decisions when lawmakers should, unelected bureaucrats, or whether it's international organizations making decisions that our lawmakers should, we cannot stand for that. The only way to return this country to the people who govern it, is to make sure we have a strong Congress doing its job, passing laws, and actually approving the regulations that these unelected bureaucrats are trying to cram down on the American people. And I pledge to you, as a United States Senator, supporting the REINS Act, supporting any effort to rein back in our out-of-control federal agencies, make sure politics is pushed out of it, make sure we bring down spending. I am all for that, and I've got the backs of the American people, DOJ, and President Trump on that. I am driven by many things in life. I will bring the influence of many things in my life, my experiences certainly, but I am driven by my faith in God, first and foremost. I am driven by the fact that I am a mother and I still have a kid in school. And whether it was protecting children from social media, from the dangers of fentanyl, the poison that's being pushed into our nation as the result of a wide open border, whether it's protecting our soldiers, the oldest boy in our family is a soldier. So whether it is supporting them while they are abroad or after they come home, I have their backs. And last but not least, God has blessed me with an amazing husband who's with me, Justin. When I told him I wanted to leave the bench, now mind you, I may be the first senator governor. I don't know if this went into your plan. He was most excited I'm a trained accountant, so I can shrink the bloat of the federal government. But I also served over a decade in the judiciary. I have now served in the executive branch. I may be the only United States senator that is now in my third branch of government and bringing all of that with me to the role.
So there's the news. The irony here, Dana, is that in 2018, she succeeded Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Won her race by 6 points, was reelected in 2022, won her race by 15 points. So the news is out.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.